Okay, so what I want to talk to you about now is an action plan. Now, first thing you have to do is to take a look at the people and say, all right, who do I have on the payroll today that I ought to offer this kind of plan? The second thing is how many new people do you think you're going to add to the plan on an annual basis? Are you going to grow regionally and then be looking at adding regional sales managers and marketing and salespeople in different markets? What do you think the addition of people that you would want to involve in this plan, what's that going to look like? And then you've got to come up with the valuation formula. And sometimes, the corporation says, look, I don't want this plan to be any more than 20% of the company from a valuation standpoint. Again, they're not going to own real stock in the company, but if you set a maximum number of shares that you're going to make available that correspond to the real stock of the company, you know what your potential liability is going to look like going forward. So you want to come up with a valuation, but you also want to kind of build a cap on how big you want this plan to get. Then you look at growth expectations. What's this thing going to look like for the owners? What's it going to look like for the participants if there's a 5% growth versus a 15% growth? And, one of the things that we do is we build the spreadsheets and the models so that you can look at what the impact is on the company if there's 5% growth versus 15% growth, so you can get an idea of what that liability is going to look like down the road. And you certainly don't want to jump into a plan like this until you've charted that all out. So I just talked about the forecasting and the spreadsheeting. You need to also look at the tax impact of doing these plans. And I don't want to get into that today just because there's a lot of nuances. But adjusting for whatever tax impact that might be available on this is important. One of the things that happens is that each time a participant vests in their shares, they've got to recognize not income taxes, but payroll taxes on the vested portion. And they get that out of the way when the numbers are small so that when they get to retirement and the numbers are big, they don't have to turn around and pay those taxes again. So that's a good idea. Then we got to build the plan documents that spell out how the plan works, what the vesting looks like, what are the liquidity events, and then how they're getting paid out. All of that has to be in a plan document. And then you've got to engage a third-party administrator for the plan. And the administrator will keep track of what the corporation owes all the participants, and they'll produce benefit statements for the participants so they can see how many shares they've got, what the valuation of the shares are, so that they have kind of a statement that they can use to put on their personal financial statement and give them an expectation of what the values are going to look like down the road. And that's important because if a person looks at the values they have in a phantom stock plan, and they know that if they leave the company, they're going to lose 20, 30, 40% because somebody else is recruiting them, they'll think twice about leaving because they don't want to walk away from the non-vested portion of the plan. So you do that with the statements that the third-party administrator presents. Then once we've got that all put together, then we create a presentation for everybody. And that's basically where you want to get them in a room and you want to roll out a plan, and you want to inspire them to show that the employer cares about them and the employer wants to help them build wealth. But we also lay out what do they got to do to perform and to get additional shares down the road. And that's kind of my job, is to get them pumped up to become performers to get more and more shares in the phantom stock plan. And then we schedule the plan and we roll it out.